Well, I'm in this series called Certainly Not, and it's a series about faith irony. And the premise that I've been trying to establish this last month, I've been teaching this or more, is that when we attempt to live a spiritual life, many times we want certainties, promises of God, or certain things that we are fearful about. We've been told or we believe is the goal of faith is to make those things certain. And so what I've been trying to teach is a contrarian view of certainly how I see the Scriptures, that faith is not about certainty at all. Faith is not in being certain about a something. Faith is about a trust in a someone, Jesus and God. And so the goal of my faith is not to become certain at it. The goal of my faith is not to live it correctly or perform it gooder, better, slaughtering the grammar on purpose to make a point. That's not the goal. The goal is to live it in trust of God. And so it's a series, what I've been teaching about faith irony. The more certain you attempt to make your faith, the less certain it becomes. And the more you live with the uncertainty of life, applying a relational trust in God, ironically, certainty comes in, or you are held in uncertainty. So the reality is many of you have been around Christianity a long time, and this isn't about an old belief. This is about a new way of believing. Now, last week my comments were in light of Charlottesville and the terrible things that happened there. And I want to take this, I want to give part 2 to that, but it relates very much to where your life is at. So I'm going to start with assumption and a recap that as I was teaching through the Good Samaritan, that there is no room in the Christian life, in the living the Christian life, in the Christian ethic for any kind of supremacy, racial, national, religious. What is supremacy? The philosophy of supremacy is simply this: I have the better view. I have the better way of life. Mine is better than yours. So when people start thinking that racially, religiously, nationally, all kinds of hell breaks loose. And Jesus, who came with a message, a specific message of faith and love. What's interesting about his specific message in Christianity is he used no supremacy at all to deliver it or to persuade. He used no supremacy. Jesus simply taught love, and he invited people into a deep relationship with God. And it was an invitation. Now, what's interesting is I spoke last Sunday what happened in Charlottesville over the weekend, and then the week in America got weirder. Just more weird stuff happened, and it invaded all kinds of politics, left and right and centrist. And so if you're in America, you can't escape our politics, and you certainly can't escape what's happening with our divide, politically, partisan-wise, racially, religiously, when it comes to immigration, when it comes to infrastructure, so many things about this divide. Well, I'm not a politician, so I can't necessarily speak to those things. I'm not an expert in constitutional law, so I can't speak to that. I'm not a philosopher or a psychologist. I'm a pastor. I dabble in theology. And so you being in a church and us living in a nation where we have the free expression of religion, Amendment 1 of the Bill of Rights by James Madison, is that we have this wonderful opportunity and privilege and right to freely express. So in a church, I want to talk about what this means as a follower of Christ. I have no authority over you, as I say. I just invite your consideration. I appeal to your intellectual curiosity and honesty just to at least consider what I'm saying. You do not have to agree with it. But I'm watching this tremendous divide, and everybody's talking about their values, and we differ, or people talk about their rights, and they differ. Take the statues down, leave the statues up. Build the wall, don't build the wall. Open up trade, batten down our trade process. Vote left, vote right. Let's find a centrist. And so whether you turn on CNN or Fox News or MSNBC or listen to talk radio, everybody is kind of giving their take on values. And one of the things I said last week was there is no room in the Christian value, ethic, American value, and ethic for any form of supremacy at all. Racial, gender, religious, national. No. Our American values, we're against anti-Semitism. We're against racism. We're against any kind of hate in any way. So I'm going to start there. But still, we see this divide, and we see people talk about our values. Well, our American values, I don't know when the last time you read the Declaration of Independence, so I'd encourage you to read it. It'll take you 6 minutes. But you know how it starts. It says, when in the course of human events, when this tyranny has happened, as Jefferson writes, and then is ratified on the 4th, which is basically this, that we held up in our American value that there are certain inalienable God-given rights. This is what we value. We value life, which basically means you can't be tyrannical with yours over mine. My life is my own. And I'm allowed to have my own well-being and navigate it. It's life. Life has a value. Then there's liberty. When it comes to life and liberty, lives are meant to be free. You can show no power over me in any way as to rob me of freedom. It's wrong. And you can't do that based on my religion, the color of my skin. No, we're equal. All men, as Jefferson wrote, all people are created equal. And then they have the pursuit of happiness. This doesn't mean the guarantee of happiness. What he is talking about is a quality of life. I get to navigate my quality of life as I see fit. That's what freedom is. And you can't rob that from me in any way, with power in any way, whether the power is gender, political, racial, you can't. It's out of bounds in our American value. Matter of fact, we didn't say it was a human value, which we were saying will become our American value. We were stating that these are God-given and natural for all human beings. And then that's at the start of the Declaration. If you then read the rest of the Declaration, then Jefferson cites all of these places. You've taxed us without representation. You've invaded and seized things in our homes with never letting us know or giving us means as to why you're doing this. You've thrown us in jail. You've executed us with no trial. You've taxed us. You've changed things on us all the time for your benefit. And Jefferson goes on to say, we have been patient, and finally no longer. So this starts, and then we started a revolutionary to win our rights and values. And so now we see this divide over what those are. And I think the New Testament is clear when it comes to the racial divide or any hate. In Jesus' teaching, which I taught last week, which I'm making an assumption, check, we did that. There's no room for any hate, racism, supremacy, and anything in a Christian ethic, in a Jesus ethic, in an American ethic. But the point is then, how do we get there? So look what the Apostle Paul says. Do we have Ephesians and Galatians? For Christ himself has brought peace to us. He united Jews and Gentiles, religion, race, nationality, into one people when his own body on the cross. He broke down what? The wall of hostility. We are experiencing hostility, racial, political, partisan, over statues, over our heritage. And so there is this divide, and then people talk, well, I value this. This is how I take my American rights, or my rights as a Christian. Look what Paul goes on to say in Galatians. There is no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male or female. For you are, he said, there's no supremacy anymore. It's over. You need to realize that these statements in that era were revolutionary. Revolutionary. In fact, it may be a long time since you've read the Beatitudes or the Sermon on the Mount. It's recorded two places, Matthew, which usually gets quoted, which I've often taught from, but I'm going to show you it from Luke. And I want you to see what Jesus says about a radical right or a radical value. I want you to see this in Luke chapter 6, verse 27. But those of you who are willing to listen, so even Jesus is saying, no supremacy here. I'm just going to mention this. You consider it. But you who are willing to listen, I say, love your enemies. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who hurt you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, well, offer the other cheek also. If somebody demands your coat, offer your shirt also. Give to anyone who asks, and when things are taken away from you, don't try to get them back. Do to others as you would like them to do to you. There's the golden rule. At the paragraph under love your enemies, he ends, you treat other people as you want to be treated. If you love only those who love you, why should you get any credit for that? If your mother sends you a birthday card and your pooch welcomes you home, that's wonderful. But that's what happens in life. Mothers send cards and your dog loves you. Even sinners love those who love them. And if you do good to only those who do good to you, why should you get credit? Even sinners do that much. And if you lend money to only those who can repay you, why should you get credit? Even sinners will lend to other sinners for full return. Love your enemies. Let's stop there. Do you remember? Listen, this is not a Christian platitude. You need to put, this is beyond a Christian principle. You need to put this in the context of what Jesus is when he's teaching it. He's teaching it to people that are under a Roman tyranny. They are living and breathing it, much worse than we see in America at this moment. And he teaches this revolutionary concept. This is the concept that God continues to open borders. God doesn't build walls, he drops them. God doesn't say, this is our little crew. He goes, it's open to everybody. Love your enemies. Do good to them. By the way, I love what Cornel West says. That's what justice is. Justice is love in action. So he says it's love. You love them in heart. You feel love for them. Agape. Love doesn't, it's not love just as a choice. We love to say this as love is a choice. Love is beyond a choice. When love really collides with God, Absolutely, making the choice is the most base. True agape love means not only do you choose it, you feel it. You actually feel it. Love your enemies, do good to them, lend to them without expecting to be repaid. Then, Jesus is saying, that's the spiritual life. Then your reward in heaven will be very great, and you will truly be acting as what? As you'll be acting like God. You'll be acting like God when you have this kind of love. For he is kind to those who are unthankful and wicked. What did Jesus say to his enemies as he hung on the cross? Forgive them. They see the world a certain way. They have certain values. Forgive. They don't even know how they got to how they view things. Forgive them. You must be compassionate just as your Father is compassionate. You know, as complicated as this book is and as big as this book, there's only 3 things that Jesus said to do exactly like him. Only 3. He said, I want you to love as I have loved you. I want you to accept as I have accepted you. And I want you to forgive as I have forgiven you. Could you imagine? Look, at this thing's filled with a gazillion things. A gazillion. Could you imagine if we just walked out of here and go, I'm just going to do those 3. Only 3. I'm going to love, accept, and forgive. How would we do as a world, as a people? So it's kind of like the lawyer to Jesus. Jesus, we could talk Torah all day. We agree. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God. You and I could talk New Testament all day. We agree. Love, 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 love. Who disagrees with that? And yet there is this divide. So I don't want to per se talk about this, but let's take you and me. And another you and me. And there is a divide. This group says, no, these are our values. Put them up, tear them down. We need to erase our history. We need to honor our history and learn from it. We need to let immigrants in. We need to keep them all out. Pro-choice, pro-life, on and on and on. So what happens? So again, as an ethicist, per se, a philosopher, a psychologist, an academic, I can add nothing. A lawyer, I can't. But in theology, I can, I hope. I have people that come into my office, forget globalization or American issues. They're just dealing with their rights in their marriages. Dave, we'd be good if it wasn't for her. Dave, we'd be good if he would get his act together. He's infringing on my rights. He's taking everything about me. So there are several ways to get to this. And I'm going to lay what I believe Christianity says, and I'm going to give you my premise for what I don't think it says. So let's call this, you win. You have good values. I like them. I agree with them. I'm good with that. Life, liberty, and happiness. Neither Greek, nor Jew, nor slave, nor free, male. Good. Let's just say all the values are good. But you got to defend those values. You might have to. You're going to have to hold those values up. You're going to see them probably. You're going to have to, somebody's going to try to take those values away. You're going to have to stand up against them. Hopefully not always, but it happens. But still, how do you get there? Well, I see a lot of the difference in this. If you choose to get to these values, again, what are the values? Let's just say you win. You have good values. If you try to get there through an ideology, your belief system. In fact, as politics develops, we call this identity politics, that your politics are based on your ethnocentric view. And so if you are going to get to your rights by an ideology, an ideologue, and sticking to your ideology and going, it's what I believe, man. It's what I value. I'm not budging from that. That's one way to get there. Idol, which is an idol, is we put something before God in our life and God's ethic in our life and God's way of life. This is what I think, man. It's my beliefs. I'm sticking to it. I'm not even saying your beliefs are bad. I'm saying if you get to your values and rights only that way, it may be trouble. If you get there through supremacy, my way of life is better than yours. My way of life is I'm Democratic, that's better than you Republicans. I'm Republican, that's better than you Democrats. I voted for Hillary, that's better than you voting for Trump. I voted for Trump, that's better than you voting for... This is a form of supremacy. Absolutely are you allowed opinion, and absolutely are you allowed to think what's best. Supremacy is not that. Supremacy is when you're even allowed to persuade. This is what I think, absolutely. Supremacy is when you use power to say your way is best. So if you get to your rights by supremacy, my way of life is better than yours, that doesn't fit within Christian ethics. And it creates more divide. I'll use an economic term, protectionism. It's mostly a trade philosophy, but protectionism is scarcity. I'm afraid you're going to take away what I value. I'm afraid that you're going to impede me from my rights. And so I need to protect them. And I know what you're saying. What's wrong with that? I'm saying what it does is when people get to their rights this way, this is what, when you turn on CNN and MSNBC and listen to Rush or Hannity or Fox or NBC, when someone has an ideology, an agenda, it creates something, and it creates more divide. For the people that agree with you, no. They're all in the same camp with you. You're in a divide with those who don't. Jesus didn't say the way to get to neither Greek nor Jew, nor male or female slave. He didn't say this way. And so what happens is when we move this way, it could make motives and division very squirrely. So Jesus taught, love your enemies. But what does that mean? What Jesus taught is a revolutionary ethic. Let's just say, hey, I'm interested in your rights, good values. You don't get there by demanding them. Jesus taught empathy, compassion, love. When you feel first what the other feels, that's how you get to what you feel is your right. So let's just go back to our own declaration. When in the course of events, when a tyrannical power takes away what we think is inalienable, and the truths that we hold as inalienable is the dignity of all humanity, life, liberty, freedom, and the pursuit to navigate their own life, their own well-being. We hold these truths to be self-evident. It's a natural law. Not only is it a God-given law, you just know in your heart you are not meant to be controlled. You know it. You're meant to be free. But still, we agree. But if you have to get there through an ideology and being fanatical about it, or you won't let go of that ideology, you may get there a weird way. And when you get there, you may be really weird. Or if the weirdness is just division, you just create more division. If you get there by supremacy, listen, the way I view life is better. Republicanism is better than being a Democrat. Being a Democrat is better than being a Republican. Christians are Republicans. How can you be a Christian and be a Democrat? When you have that, you are now showing up with ideology. I'm not even trying to take away your ideology. I'm saying when you get to this way, all kinds of trouble. What Jesus teaches, if I'm a northerner, I need to listen to what southerners are saying about their monuments. I need to understand something. Oh, I have an opinion about it, but I need to hear. If I have Republican politics or Democratic politics, I need to listen civilly what other people are saying. If I am a white person in economic, social, racial power, I need to listen to my brothers and sisters who are of color. I need to crawl into their life. Because I may get to my values or hold different values once I feel what you feel. I certainly will lessen the divide. And if you are at a crappy place in your relationship with the one you love, you are standing in the way of my life. My life would be better if you weren't in it. You are robbing me of my life. We would be in a better place if you would change. This marriage would be flying high if you were different. That's holding to an ideology, a supremacy, and a protectionism. And I'll tell you what, I'm not living this way anymore. I'm not standing for that. But when you get in a therapist's office or a counselor's office, and when you go, I had to do it in my own life. I thought I was coming here because the people in my life have problems. But I realized it's me. I realized it's how I view the world. And I realized that how I view the world, it shaped me in my backstory. And it's hurting the people I love. And yeah, I value good things. My gosh, I'm a pastor, I'm a good guy. I stand for good values. But how I get there is just creating all kinds of divide. And then when somebody you love is also in that office and goes, me too, we need to look at me, then everything starts healing. When you start going, how do I hurt you? What do I need to I'm a white person. What do I need to listen to my black brothers and sisters, my brothers and sisters of different color, of different cultures, of different, what do I help me to see what you see, to feel what you feel? If you've ever pursued academics, especially at the graduate level, master's or PhD, and right now I'm in a very rigorous program. So when you show up to write a research paper, when I show up to write research papers, before I hand it in, I have to show up in front of my professor or my advisory council and give my premise. This is my premise, and this is what I'm concluding, and I will prove this in my paper. I've had more times not my professor turn to me and go, that's your agenda. That's your agenda. You have an agenda in this paper, and now you are going to prove it. You can do that as a pundit, a commentator, not as an academic. You can't do that as an academic. Go write a book if that's what you want to do. Go preach a sermon if that's what you want to do. You can't do that as an academic. As an academic, you have to say, the evidence, or a researcher, the evidence will lead me. I will arrive at a conclusion when I feel the evidence, when I feel it and see it and analyze it. And I've had more agendas flipped going, oh, this is what I wanted it to say. That's not what the research leads to at all. And so what Jesus teaches about this is you don't get here by conclusion. You know what I think? You know what I think? I think this. You know what I think? I think this. You know my viewpoint is this. Well, you get to do that around that's your coffee tables and your dinner. That's what we do in life. That's part of being human. But when you start having elevated conversations or you want a Jesus ethic, it's this. Tell me what you think. I don't want to conclude my values or my rights in a vacuum by my own presuppositions. Do you remember the man in the rich barn? He killed himself. He was called a fool based on his presuppositions. He looked at his life and he looked at his barns and he goes, you know what I think? I need bigger ones. And Jesus turns to him and goes, you're a fool. You view all of life through your own ideology, your own supremacy, what you need to protect. And Jesus says his kind of ethic is to feel what others feel. And this is what Christianity is. So I end with this. Have your values. Have all of these things. But if you are serious about wanting Jesus part of your life, I just invite you to do what I'm doing. Before you conclude anything, before you speak your mind about anything, do two things. First, will I run it? Am I running it through this? Or am I running it second through empathy? That's the first thing. And the second thing is, don't conclude in serious things in life. Don't simply conclude. Arrive there. The wisest people arrive at these places. And when you run your heart and life through feeling what other people feel, whether it's your spouse, your lover, your children, your family, other races, other parties, other voters, when you go in and you walk into that private booth and are about ready to flip that lever, however you're going to vote, and you're going to vote politically through your faith, which is okay. By the way, when Jesus said love your enemies, that's a political statement. Jesus was sought after it was sedition in their mind. He was a colonial. He was a rebel. So however you talk, just listen. Feel. That's what agape love is. And then if you get to this and you finally speak your values and rights as a follower of Christ, you get there by feeling what someone else feels. And you may then change what you value. And if you change what you value because you felt. Now, I've gone way too much time, but I'll just say this. If you've ever read anything by Paul Bloom at Yale University, a psychologist who studies empathy, he actually says, when we see white supremacists and we see this, we go, these people must not have any empathy at all. Actually, all the studies show opposite. People who are driven with hate have gobs of empathy. The problem is their values are skewed. So they drive cars into people because they feel what their brothers feel. They're not heartless. It's actually, that's what scares us about fanatics. But what Jesus held as our value is this: you love your enemies. You treat others as you want to be treated. There's neither Jew or Greek or male or female, slave or free. We are equal. So how you work your empathy, you do start with the values of love God with all your heart, love your neighbor as yourself, love your enemies, accept, forgive, and love people who are different than you. Then when your empathy starts to affect your ideology, you start to get in a room of people that go, me too, me, with their ideology, and you feel that, you run it through this. And I think when we start getting to what matters to us as Christians and Americans is issues, I hope issues matter to you. Move that way in empathy. And we will get there, I believe, a better way then we're trying to get there now. Let's pray. Good. Good. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. Amen. Let's pray. Thank you. Father God, be with us. Whether it's our marriages, our parenting, our politics, our racial, religious, socioeconomic identity. May we hold truths that are self-evident, which is that all people are created equal. All people have dignity. And there is no place in Christendom or in America for any kind of hate. And what you called us to as Christians is a revolutionary idea. It's radical, which is to love people that you couldn't imagine loving. So as white people, may we feel what our black brothers and people of color feel. May we listen to our spouses and lovers and hear how they're experiencing us. Before we wax on about our beliefs and our rights and our values, may we check our ideology and our own personal supremacy and our own protectionism. Oh no, if I don't step in here, I'm going to lose it all. There is great certainty in that way. Ideology, supremacy, protectionism, that happens out of fear. That's why we drive for certainty. There is great risk in loving. What if I feel what someone feels and I lose my rights? What happens? Exactly. Democracy is messy. Love is messy. But there's no other way. No other way. For when we move in love and move in trust and not desperately hang on to certainty and claim it as our own, we reflect or better reflect the heart of God and will unify our nation, our brothers and sisters, and be the kind of Christians you want us to be. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank our child care workers.